England have somehow, some way, found themselves to be at top of their group at Euro 2024, and instead of focusing on the negatives, instead of talking about what's gone wrong and how everything has fallen apart, I'm going to look ahead. Today we're going to look ahead towards the knockout stages and what England need to change and how they need to set up to really fix a lot of the issues going on. So today we're going to be talking about what England must do and what they must change going into the knockout stages of Euro 2024. Before we take a look at my team and what I have changed, I want to really highlight what I think needs to happen with this England side and the changes that need to be made within the setup to allow them to go on and prosper in the knockout stages. So the first thing is the problem that's out on this left wing. Gareth Southgate has attempted to try to change it by moving and swapping Bellingham and Foden on occasion, and for me it just didn't work. I still think the left side looked very unbalanced. I still think it looked quite rigid and just not very good at being able to flow through the lines, albeit they did get an offside goal, so they did manage to create one pattern of play, but for me it's not good enough, and this left channel really needs to be looked at. The second thing that I want to talk about is the progression through the lines. The centre-backs are having a very difficult time of finding the likes of Declan Rice, and then Declan Rice himself is struggling to try and find passes into those forward areas. The tempo of England's play is almost static and it needs to change, and then you're going to see some of the progression through the lines be a little bit better, but they need to find a way to change the progression through the side. And then finally I want to talk about the chance creation. England in those three matches that I've previously mentioned have created 11 shots on target. I will repeat that because I think it's quite important. 11 shots on target. That amounts to almost or just over 3 shots on target per match, which is nowhere near good enough when you consider the fact that they've played the likes of Serbia, the likes of Denmark and Slovenia. So something needs to change there. Those are the three things I really want to highlight, and now let's talk about the team. When looking at the defence, we need to look at a couple of things. Of course, the main one is can they defend? But the second one is just as important. The progression that comes through the lines from these defenders will really set the tempo for the way the team will set out. And obviously, the higher the passing and the quicker the passing, the better chance England have of playing the progression through the lines. Previously, we saw them set up like this, in a 4-1 build-up formation, and this meant that you had 4 defenders, very static in the way they were playing, passing through between themselves before allowing for a pass more than likely down the wings. In the game against Slovenia, they changed, and what ended up happening was a defender ended up coming and playing next to Declan Rice in this particular instance. The 3 left would then move round and they'd play in a 3-2 formation. This allowed for better progression because it meant that not only did you have an extra option just to move the ball a little bit further forwards, but at the same time you're also dragging opposition players away. This meant that England were able to progress the ball a little bit easier, progress the ball a little bit further and get up the pitch that little bit faster. With that in mind, and in particular the idea of progression, this is the defence and midfielder that I've gone for. Now, you might see a difference here. I've gone for Trent Alexander-Arnold in at right back in place of Kyle Walker, who I've swapped over to that left-hand side. I was actually quite impressed with the way that Walker dealt with a number of scenarios when he was swapped over to that left-hand side late on in the game against Slovenia. And I do believe that giving a little bit of extra defensive presence to England's left-hand side can never be discounted. On top of the fact, moving Trent Alexander-Arnold into a more midfield position while still staying as a right back, I might add, just enables him to get a little bit further forwards while also keeping his creative aspect. Trent Alexander-Arnold has completed the most chances, or has created the most chances out of any single England player in the entire tournament. And when I tell you that he's only played 129 minutes out of the 270 available, that's pretty good. And just considering how good he is on the ball, I think England have to find a way to get him into the side, and I've got him in at right back. His utilisation of the football when moving into midfield is something that I think England are going to seriously need. And when they think about progressing the ball forwards, it then allows for the further midfielders to occupy better spaces. Partnering Declan Rice and not leaving him by himself just gives England that little bit better of an edge to be able to move the ball forwards into the higher thirds of the pitch. Moving into the other midfielders in this team, and you'll see a pretty remarkable drastic difference. I don't have any Jude Bellingham in my side, and I've got a reason for that. He seems to have really regressed in the time that he's been playing for England at the Euros, and I can put that down to one thing, and I just think he's absolutely shattered. He's played over 104 matches, or just about 104 matches, in his time as a footballer in the last 2 years, and that is a ridiculous amount of football. Not to mention the fact that Gareth Southgate is asking a number of things from him, and I just don't think he's having the impact that not only he would want, but I think the rest of his England teammates would want. So I've benched him for this particular setup. Kobbie Mainoo needs to come into the midfield for me. His progression through the lines is absolutely sensational. But it's not just that. It's the ability for him to drop a little bit deeper and receive the ball from the centre-backs at any given point, driving forwards to then link with whether it's the right winger, the left winger, or anyone really. His ability to pick a pass and be calm on the ball and composed in situations which require a level head is just integral to the way that England need to set up. Phil Foden for me comes into the midfield. He has that 10 role now that he has wanted for so very long. No longer is he stuck out on that left hand side, and he can start drifting in through the lines and start to link play like we know he wants to. Some of the best moments that we've seen Phil Foden have in an England shirt at Euro 2024 is when he's dropped a little bit deeper and then progressed the ball through, either with a mazy run of his or just by linking the play through passing. Having a midfield three of Rice, Mainoo and Foden not only gives England the ball progression they require, but with Mainoo and Rice there's also a defensive aspect to the game, not requiring Trent Alexander-Arnold to start scanning and looking for players. Instead, Mainoo can move further forwards once England get the ball progression up a little bit higher, and Trent can move into midfield. This requires a back three movement and two in midfield to progress the ball a little bit higher, while allowing Foden and Mainoo to have their free roaming roles to give England that little bit of creativity. And finally, this is my front three. First of all, let's look at that left hand side. What have we done? Well, we've got Gordon coming in for Phil Foden in place on this left hand side, and automatically you've got a player who's got the ability to go on the outside but also drift in field. He had a very, very small cameo, but we can tell from that he's got the vision to be able to pick a pass into both the central striker but also to the late runner in Phil Foden, who might be looking to get towards the edge of the area and beyond to try and create some opportunities. Gordon's running power will not only push defenders back, but also offer up the space while holding the flank to give Foden that little bit extra time movement to be able to jut himself into different pockets and different spaces to give England a little bit more creativity. Speaking of creativity, I've got England's arguably most creative player out on this right hand side. While it was difficult for me to leave out Bukayo Saka, I think giving him a rest might be something that England could really benefit from. Cole Palmer is not just a right winger, we know this. His creative aspect is something that needs to be harnessed and needs to be utilised within this England side, and I believe that he can see passes and see plays that some players just can't even fathom. So putting him out on this right hand side not only gives him the space to be able to drift in field and go on the outside, but also linking with the likes of a Kobbie Mainoo, linking them with the likes of a Phil Foden, should give England that creative aspect that they've been waiting for so long. And then you're talking about Trent Alexander-Arnold. He can do overlapping runs if he wants to, but laying off from Palmer to Trent Alexander-Arnold for a deep line cross towards the likes of Harry Kane, towards Foden who is entering the box, and Anthony Gordon, automatically gives England a completely different dynamic. It feels like in the last 3 games we've lost the idea of crossing the ball, and instead just recycling quite calmly is the only option. Well, no longer. Trent is one of the best crossers of the ball in the world currently. He's our version of a David Beckham, or our generation's version of a David Beckham, and he's the closest thing to it. So why not utilise his capabilities, push him further forwards, and then cross the ball into one of the best strikers in the world. It seems to make a lot of sense, doesn't it? And then you've got Phil Foden and Kobbie Mainoo working together in tandem. There are already a couple of combination plays that we saw them have in the game against Slovenia. Give them a bit more time on the pitch, and I believe they'll be able to strike up a remarkable partnership. That's not to say that Jude Bellingham can't come into this side, but for now, I'd start those two. And then you're talking about the progression that's through this England setup, where you've got Mark Gahey, Kyle Walker, and John Stones moving into a back three to allow for Trent Alexander-Arnold to join Declan Rice in this inside channel, but still as a right back, to be able to pick passes and pick a number of different opportunities for this England setup. I'm already thinking of Anthony Gordon making runs in beyond those defensive players, with Trent Alexander-Arnold being able to find passes through those lines, over the top, his signature crossfield pass. And then you're looking at Declan Rice playing passes into Cole Palmer, Kobbie Mainoo running off the back of that, Phil Foden driving towards the box with Harry Kane as well. The decisions and the options are vast, and I do believe that in this different England setup, they should have a lot more creation, a lot more balance through the entire side with that left flank sorted, and just a number of different progressive options to allow England to better use the ball, but also to be able to create better opportunities. And that's it, guys. That's how I believe England must set up going into the knockout stages of Euro 2024. But of course, let me know how you guys think England should set up and how well you think they're going to do towards the end of the tournament. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, hope you learned something new, and hope to see you in the next one. But until then, my friends, take care.